Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another test disc and final test discs for the final feature and the bonus disc for Shaw Brothers Volume 4, released on 8th of December 2025 by Arrow Video. I will be releasing this video a little bit earlier than usual, just to kind of tie off this complete collection of films and review series I've been doing, and I can start fresh going forward into December. From what I've been seeing on social media, from Instagram, X, and a lot of the kind of communities, everyone is starting to get that box set edition now from the US and the UK really early, like a couple of weeks early in terms of their collection, and diving into it for the very first time. Hopefully these videos from the past couple of weeks now have been quite helpful, insightful in terms of my thoughts and impressions on the films, the special features, and just giving you an overall kind of impression what you're going to get in terms of this box set. Whether it's the films I've really enjoyed, whether it's the mid-tier films, whether it's the ones that I've absolutely despised, and there's been a few on this edition that I've really not enjoyed, it is down to perspective. It's down to your own individual taste, what you want to see, what you enjoy, and you know, take a gamble. If you think this box set is worth the price tag for day one release, pick it up. If you want to check it out on the Arrow Video Player, the good thing is that they do release all these films on the Arrow Video Player. There's usually a 7-day free trial, or if you get a lot of the Arrow editions, you get a 3rd-day free trial. And with the Black Friday sales during this weekend, you know, it's a good time to kind of check it out, maybe before purchasing the edition, or wait for a deep sale, which usually a lot of these box sets end up being half the price by, you know, 3 or 4 months down the line. So have a little think, see what's worth your money and time, and go from there. One thing I do want to say is thank you to every single person that's subscribed and commenting, interacting. I know I've made a few mistakes in terms of the directors and the confusions. You know, I am human after all. I'm trying to do the best I can with, you know, watching these films and enjoying them, and sometimes I get a little bit too hyped up or get a little confused in terms of, you know, who did what. So my apologies for any errors that I've done. You know, this is just my excitement, my kind of, you know, jumping into these reviews and having a lot of fun doing them. We have the final film on the edition, which is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and the bonus disc. In terms of special features, I actually have a lot to talk about now. I'm not going to dive massively into them. I do think a lot of the special features on the bonus disc and on the extras on the main disc, I think is really good for you guys to check out for yourself. I may comment on a couple of ones that I really enjoy watching and getting a bit more of an insight. How does this one end? And unfortunately, it ends on a whimper, then a bang. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, released in 1983, directed by Alex Chung, which has a really good special feature, which is about 25 minutes. I'll save that for the special features point of view, which is a really good little insight into his career in making the film as well. I should have known better. The hint was in the title, Twinkle Twinkle, and if you kind of watching my videos for quite some time, especially during the early portion when I got into Jackie Chan and kind of, you know, Sammo Hung and Yuen Biang films and a lot of Hong Kong movies, the very kind of a broad, kind of very heavy slapstick Twinkle Twinkle Star movies with those actors in mind, I did not like, did not enjoy. You know, the action side of it, yeah, is one thing. The comedy, the jokes, they don't work in those films for me personally. Yes, there is the argument of kind of, you know, it's all taking a bit of fun spirit kind of thing. There's just, you know, some movies can get away with it more than others. You know, the carry-on films, you know, the British kind of carry-on films. But the thing is that with at least them, the men are inside the joke as well. You know, there was a bit of like a you know, tit for tat kind of thing. You know, going back and forth in terms of one-upping each other. You know, the women characters are just as feisty and strong and very capable, whether it's their sexuality, whether it's their kind of, you know, getting their own back on the men. You know, comedy is very subjective, and I think with those types of movies, for me personally, I just feel like these are established, really great actors, martial artists, and comedians. Don't get me wrong, they are got some great comedy lineup in their films, but I think those movies are just really not for me at all, and I just think they're in such bad taste. And I think it's down to what you enjoy seeing on screen. You know, do I want to see 5 men pervert or talk about raping a woman, justifying it? I know it's a little bit within the kind of the culture a little bit in terms of that kind of expressive talk, and which brings me to my point within Twinkle Twinkle Little Star being a film that is purely just a straight ball, goofball comedy, inspiring heavily, of course, from sci-fi films, pop culture films, contemporary films of the time. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Wars, Superman, you know, etc., just every other type of mainstream big idea of the time, of the mid-80s, that's popular and quickly making a film of it. And it's interesting, obviously, on the bonus disc, talking about some of the direct film quickly to beat the US market, them talking about making their own King Kong movie to beat the remake version coming out at the time. It's interesting kind of mindset in terms of cashing in on what's popular. Do you want to see a bunch of actors, Hong Kong actors that you know and familiarize with, maybe either comedians, maybe they're in that kind of space, doing parodies or mimicking or recreating moments from iconic movies from the Western market? And it's Shaw Brothers thinking, okay, what is popular, what is selling well, what is doing well at the moment? And it's just a strange time, I think, for Shaw Brothers in terms of their horror side of it and their more sci-fi comedic side. Definitely taking some inspiration not just from the West, but also from their competition, being Golden Harvest, doing Zulu Warriors, and them doing some creative kind of risks and bigger projects, and some upcoming stars and directors as well. And while I do think Twinkle Twinkle Little Star does have good production value, while I do think it has some moments for sure, and it is creative, I'll give it that, it is very creative. It just does not work for me at all. All the characters I think are losers, unlikable. The comedy really does not work for me at all. And to the point of like straight up plagiarizing, these iconic moments from other iconic films. You can take it as a bit of a wink and a nod kind of thing. And again, something like Spaceballs, the Mel Brooks films, or the spoof movies, Scary Movie. They can take liberties from these mainstream films, but they're doing their own thing with it, and I think it just comes down to what you enjoy. What is the comedy working? Is your investment in this film, these characters, paying off those jokes, and especially being pop culture reference wise, is it working for you? And for me personally, no. I think the characters are pretty terrible, if I'm being honest. Not a single character that I liked or enjoyed. The story is nonsensical. It's all over the place. Has a really, overstretched out kind of alien kind of plot line, leading into the third act, which just straight rips off Star Wars, which, just go and watch Star Wars or go and watch Spaceballs or something, and just has really awkward kind of comedy. It has, cross-dressing in the film. It has pervy men. It has dance numbers, full-on musical sequences. And, some of it is entertaining, granted. Some of it's light, fun, but it's nearly a 2-hour movie. This is way too long for this type of stuff. And, for me, if I'm going to watch this type of film, screwball kind of comedy, goofball comedy, I'll go and watch the Stephen Chow films. I'll go and watch, Forbidden City Cop. I'll go and watch Kung Fu Hustle. I'll go and watch, Shaolin Soccer. They're just much better films in this kind of time frame, within the 80s leading into the 90s, that I can enjoy and get more out of for my own personal taste. So there isn't much for me to say or really dive into more than I already have. This is a straight up Twinkle Twinkle star comedy. It has all the stuff that you want to see in terms of that type of movie, cashing in on things that are popular, but obviously in the long run it's going to be quite dated. While it does have some good set designs and some good production value, and it's very creative, it definitely does a good job of trying to be as interesting and fun as possible. For me, it's just noise. It's just noise. And I was shocked, looking at the runtime, constantly thinking, Christ, this is 20 minutes into the film, this is half an hour into the film, and practically nothing is happening, or so much is happening to the point where this feels like an eternity for me. It's a real shame this film ended on a bit of a whimper than a bang, as mentioned, and that's just down to personal preference at the end of the day. Now, in terms of special features, in terms of the disc itself, there's actually more options this time around, which is great. As mentioned, there is a 25-minute interview with the director, Alexander Chung, which I actually thought was better than the actual film personally. I thought it was really good insight into that kind of creative mind and his work on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I thought that was a very entertaining piece from a director, from someone who's getting into that industry, making some films which were already on my wish list anyway in terms of checking out. I know Man on the Blink was at a Vinegar Syndrome release, and Cops and Robbers I already heard about way long ago, so I know those two films were kind of kick-started him in terms of his career, and this one came a bit later on in terms of the opportunity. So really good little inside extra. There's an audio commentary from Frank Jen, which I listened to a little bit of. Very interesting. I think that would be the next revisit to the film in terms of watching it with the audio commentary. Extra with Victor Pham, which talks about kind of appreciation of the film, talking about the films of the time, talking about contemporary kind of, spoof movies and inspiration from the West in terms of those very clear kind of knockoffs of Star Wars, Close Encounters, things like that. His extra I thought was really good and a really good insight into films of the time and this film as well. Also, when you do play the film, there is an additional scene that you can choose from in terms of the Cantonese Mandarin audio, and they took out, I believe, a scene from the Cantonese audio because they had a reference or a knock of the Republic president at the time, which they deleted because it obviously was in, I don't know if it was in bad taste, I don't know if it was offensive, I don't know if it was something that would get them in trouble. So it doesn't make too much of a difference ultimately, but it's cool that they actually explain reason why that scene was taken out and gives you the option to put a scene back in as well, which I think is pretty cool. And finally, the bonus disc. I'm not going to go too heavy into, but let's just say a lot of the special features that are missing from a lot of the previous discs are here on this bonus disc. It's kind of strange. It's almost like they've deliberately taken them and placed them on a bonus disc, because usually there is a soundtrack that you usually get within all 3 editions, kind of like the scoring of a lot of the films. Maybe they didn't get access to this time around, so they kind of stripped out some of those special features, some of those kind of essays and kind of discussions, new interview insights, and put them on a bonus disc instead of the actual feature disc, which they deliberately put 2 films on it. I thought the extras on here were actually quite insightful, quite very good. Again, Victor Fan talks about a lot of the films, a lot of the movies on here in terms of Battle Without Wings, Demon of the Loot, comparing a lot of movies during that kind of time, what was going on, and there's appreciation with the Super Infoman director talking about his kind of legacy, his filmmaking, diving into his kind of career, which I thought was very interesting in terms of being such a fast go director, kind of a golden boy director for Shaw Brothers in terms of making so many movies, not just martial art based, but also the monster movies and Holy Maniac, things like that kind of thing, and just trying to get films out there so quickly and demanded to work with the same crew, the same cinematographer, same kind of writer if possible, having a really tight crew, which is very much unknown for Shaw Brothers at the time, because they would be assigned different crews, different people on different projects as the film goes along. But he was someone who wanted to establish himself as a strong director, being the Flying Guillotine director, and wanted to kind of experiment with not just weaponry work, but drama, contemporary films, horror, martial arts, and just try and have a knit crew to really make these films really something interesting. And I can appreciate that from watching them, even though I don't think all of them are particularly great. I do understand, I do appreciate what he's trying to go for, and they are much more interesting compared to some of the other ones on the set. There's also a French broadcast episode talking about all the Shaw Brothers films. Of course, a lot of the standard kind of extras that you would see on this disc as well, in terms of trailers, things like that. So in terms of the bonus disc, you're getting a lot of the missing content from the previous disc on this one. So kind of like deliberately been taken out, placed on a bonus disc, which is very strange, but see what you think for yourself. I think if you want to know more about the actual films that are on there in terms of watching it, definitely jump into the bonus disc and find that specific kind of film, that specific extra. So what are your thoughts and impressions on the overall box set? Do you think it's worth the price tag? Do you love all 16 films? Are you going to wait for a sale? Are you going to check it out on the Arrow video player? I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions, guys. So in the meantime, guys, it's been Amphlett Reviews. Signing out.